In this video, our SAP Analytics Cloud product experts will demonstrate the main features of our new release. Feel free to jump straight to the features you're interested in by using the timestamps in the description below. Let's dive in and hear from our SAP Analytics Cloud product experts.
Hello, I'm Adrian Westmoreland, a product manager with SAP Analytics Cloud, and I'd like to introduce you to a new highly requested feature. This is the ability for administrators to switch off the welcome email for new users. Today, when new users are created, a welcome email is sent to each user. When provisioning, this may not be desirable. For example, the new users may not yet be onboarded. We now allow administrators to toggle the welcome emails on or off in the Analytics Cloud administration page, and this applies to users that are created through the UI, API, file upload, and dynamic user creation. You can see now in the Notification tab of the System Administration area, there is a toggle that controls welcome emails. By default, it is on, but if you toggle it off, then any new users created after this point will not receive a welcome email. Thank you.
Just Ask, the new natural language query feature, aims at enabling content consumers to get answers on their own. This release introduced the ability to ask for comparison between two planning versions, two time periods, or two measures. This is by far the most common type of question. Facts make sense only relative to others, comparable ones. This release also provides to Just Ask model curators the option to hide dimensions or measures. This is particularly useful to simplify data models and ease its understanding by content consumers. For instance, certain measures may require specific context to be understood. This context can be conveyed by content developers in stories, but when asking questions on our own, we do not have this context, this explanation. This release also introduces the support for dimension properties, so that users more familiar with properties can use these as an alternative to dimension values. Finally, we realized that to have a phased rollout, Just Ask needed two additional permissions, one to access Just Ask, the other to select models from the file repository without having an administrator add it to Just Ask beforehand. Let's start by comparison questions. We can ask client visits actual compared to forecast. We see that we are 2.6K below forecast. Comparisons are displayed as variances. We can also ask sales by country this month compared to last month. This compares time periods for each country. We can also compare two measures. For instance, sales compared to amount not invoiced by product. The second feature is to hide measures and dimensions. Using the same data model, we could ask for the average amount not invoiced by customer. Let's assume we don't want users to be able to ask this question or any other question related to amount not invoiced or to customer. As administrators, we can go in the Manage Model section, open the model by sales orders we've been using, uncheck the measure and the dimension we want to hide. Now, if we try asking the same question, we see that amount not invoiced is not in the suggestions and it's not in the list of measures from the model. We can still go ahead and type it. The same way, the dimension customer is not in the suggestions nor in the list of dimensions from the model. If we ask the question, no result is found. The next feature enables to ask questions using dimension properties. Dimension properties have a one-to-one relationship with their dimension. In the modeler, they appear as additional columns in the dimension. They are also listed in the right panel. Here, for each bike order ID, we have a torque, a color, and a frame size. In Just Ask Manage Model section, the properties are visible when expanding the order ID dimension. So now we can ask about units sold by color, by frame size, or by torque. And we can also use dimension properties to restrict the answer, for instance, to a particular frame size of 50 centimeters.
Hi everybody, my name is Bettina Denonville. I am Product Manager for Data Analyzer and will present you the new innovations as part of the QRCQ3 release. With the next update, we give the user the option to create a shortcut link for quick sharing. This enables the user to persist the current Data Analyzer view by creating a simple hyperlink. Once the shortcut link is generated, the user can copy the link to the clipboard or can open the link immediately in a new browser tab. In addition, we enable the administrators within the admin configuration to schedule a cleanup task in order to delete the shortcut links in a recurrent period. This is required since these shortcut links are not visible for end users, neither on the landing page nor in the file repository. Also, a user will be able to share his insights from within the Data Analyzer. This is primarily a usability improvement since the user does not need to leave the tool anymore in order to share his insight. We continue to improve the slice and dice capabilities on the Data Analyzer table and will provide 2 more filter options in the table context menu. One is to filter dimension members and swap the dimension with another one, and the second is filter dimension members and remove this dimension from the drill down. And Data Analyzer will support the report interface the same way like Story does. And this allows the end users to jump from the sender query to another report, the receiver query, as maintained in the BW backend. The supported report types are BW query, transaction, web address, and ABAP report. The receiver report of type BW query is always launched in the Data Analyzer. Now I'm going to jump to the live demo. I opened that insight in Data Analyzer, and based on that query, jump targets has been defined in the BW backend. I see them automatically under jump to. These jump targets are of type BW query. That means it opens Data Analyzer and brings over the context. It launches the target query with the context Region Central and State Indiana. As a next topic, I want to show you the improvements we made on the Data Analyzer table. You can select one or multiple dimension members and you can filter them and at the same time swap the dimensions with another dimension, for example, supermarket. With one click, you see that product group and product is filtered, the dimensions are removed, and instead supermarket has been added to the drill down. for example, you filter on only one supermarket, so supermarket is no longer needed on the drill down, you can remove it and filter it at the same time. Now I want to show you the improvements we made in the area of sharing. For that, I click on the Create Shortcut link. So imagine this data you want to share with somebody, but you do not want to create an insight because the data will be outdated tomorrow. For that, you can now simply create a shortcut link which persists your data, and you can copy it, the link, to the clipboard, or if you want to use it for your own purposes, you can move it by drag and drop to the browser tab, or you can open it in a new browser tab directly. And finally, you can now share an insight from the data analyzer. For that, I first need to create an insight. And then I can share it from here. I choose the person. I give it edit rights and share it. So that's it from my side for today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hi, my name is Orla Cullen and I'm a product manager at SAP. Since many years, SAP is offering the report interface functionality in its products like Lumira or Analysis for Office. With the upcoming QRC 3 release, we are happy to announce that report interface will be supported in SAP Analytics Cloud. The report interface allows to define a jump target from a BACS query. To be able to call the targets from an executed query, they must be defined within the sender-receiver assignment, which will be done in transaction RSBBS and the BW backend. When jumping from a sender to receiver, the data context is taken to calculate the settings for the jump target within the BW backend. This includes variables and filters in SAP Analytics Cloud. In the first phase of the report interface support, the following static scenarios will be included. BW queries, they will be opened in Data Analyzer. External and internal web addresses, as long as they are based on HTTPS. ABAP transactions and ABAP reports. For more information and enablement, please check our SAP note 2715030. Let's have a look at a demo. I'm now on a story in SAP Analytics Cloud and have a table with some sales data. The drill down is defined by country, distribution channel, calendar year month, and I also have some measures. Let's have a closer look at one of the rows. For example, I'll take the US, the agent as a distribution channel, and the gross revenue for January 2024. In order to consume the report interface, you do not need to develop or maintain something in SAP Analytics Cloud itself. This is all done in the BW backend during sender-receiver assignment. The report jump targets will be offered via context menu. So if I right-click on a cell and there are some jump targets available, they will be listed under the entry Jump To. Here I can jump, for example, into the ASRT transaction. I can manage my master data, visit some web pages, and of course jump to BACS queries. In my case, I'm jumping from a BACS query to another BACS query, which will be opened in Data Analyzer. As you can see, the previous data context will be considered, and some filters has been created for country, the distribution channel, and the calendar year month. The report interface is available on tables in the optimized story experience and Data Analyzer. Thanks for watching.
Hi, my name is Scott Godfrey, and I'm one of the product managers with SAP Analytics Cloud, and I'm going to cover some of the new enhancements we have coming with our Q3 2024 QRC release in the planning area. First up, we have an improvement to our advanced formulas, and that is the support for the any hierarchy parameter type. So this parameter type was supported elsewhere in the data action, but up until this point it hasn't been supported in advanced formulas, and that meant that if you needed to dynamically change the hierarchy at runtime when the user's selecting a hierarchy node in the story, this couldn't be supported by the advanced formula. It needed a hard-coded hierarchy, and that meant you would have to sort of duplicate the data action. But now with the Q3 release, we'll support this any hierarchy parameter for advanced formulas, and of course that makes the advanced formulas then more reusable across different use cases. So let's jump over and see this in action. So I'm just going to start on my data action. You'll see I have a single step. Data action is an advanced formula. If I look at my business unit, it's referring to a parameter. That parameter, if we look it up, is using this any hierarchy setting. So that's going to allow me to dynamically choose the hierarchy at runtime in the story. So let's flip over to the story. I'm going to execute my data action to copy my actuals to my plan. I'll get prompted for the business unit. We'll go ahead and make a change. We'll delete the total, which is the default. We're in hierarchy 1 here. I'll choose the Americas, and I'll run it just for the Americas. So this works fine, 275,000, or 275 million rather. I'm going to change my hierarchy now to hierarchy 2. And hierarchy 2 is rolled up differently. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy my T3 node, right? So T3 node in this case didn't copy all the data for my first copy step or copy operation. In this case, we'll change the hierarchy. We'll select the H2 and we'll select our T3 node. We'll run this. And it will copy the 492,500,000. Okay, so this is the any hierarchy parameter for advanced formulas with our Q3 release. So a new and valuable enhancement we've introduced to data actions this quarter is attribute mapping for cross-model copy operations. So when you're defining a cross-model copy and you select a dimension and you want to do the sort of the mapping between the source and the target dimension, you have the ability to select a property of the source and or target dimension to define the mapping. So I could keep an attribute, for example, in my source dimension that references specific members in the target dimension. And I can define and select that attribute as the source and match it against the target member ID. Now I can do this also where I match the source ID against the target attribute, or I can use attributes in both cases. And so this allows an interesting dynamic where I can copy one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, or even many-to-many. So this makes it quite flexible. What's nice about this, of course, is anytime I change the attributes, I don't have to do anything else in the data action itself, right? So it'll dynamically look at the attributes at runtime and map accordingly. And of course, it's important to note that technically this works as a cross-model copy operation, but cross-model copies can actually be used to move data within a single model as well. So let's jump over and see this in action. So in my story, you'll see that my source model on the left, I have the profit center dimension, and as a part of that, I have an attribute cost center, right, where I've defined a mapping between the cost center associated with the profit center, and ultimately my target model, which only has the cost center. So the mapping already looks like it has worked the last time we ran it, but if we go ahead and make a change and then rerun the data action, we'll now get the 15 in 90100 and the 60 in 90110. But as I mentioned previously, of course, we could make a change to the mapping. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll go to Profit Center. We'll change this 10010 cost center attribute to 90100. And if we navigate back to our story and we run this data action, we'll see that we now get 45 mapped to the 90100 and 30 mapped to 90110. If we just jump over to the data action itself, we'll see that our cost center, which is in our target model, profit center is our source, and we're mapping it from this source property, cost center, to our member ID in the target dimension, which is the cost center dimension. But I have the ability to map attribute to attribute as well. So this is the cross-model copy operations using attribute mapping with our Q3 release. So we have another enhancement that applies to both data actions and multi-actions with our Q3 release. And this is the ability to dynamically support passing of parameters from account and measure input controls. So up until this point, you could use a standard input control or a story filter, but you couldn't support the account measure input control. So with this release now, we can support dynamic parameters from either the account or the measure passed through to the data action, making that much more flexible. So let's jump over and see this in action. So I'm in my story, and you'll see that I have an account input control. We'll use that for example. The account input control is looking at the source model. This is going to be a cross-model copy. And you'll see that if I pull up the data action starter, that for the account dimension, I can specify the input control. I can set it to be prompt or fixed value from the input control. So right now it's set to prompt. Let's go ahead and make a change. We'll make a change to the source. We'll change the grass to 1000. And we'll filter that in the input control. And we'll go ahead and run the starter. And we'll copy our 1000 from the source to the target. So again, this is the ability to reference account and measure input controls in data action parameters with the Q3 release.
We're going away from the legacy structured allocations as a discrete action in this story and moving them into data actions. This will provide more flexibility in working with allocations as they will be easy to execute in the story as well as be scheduled in the calendar. With the system upgrade, we will be automatically migrating historical structured allocations into a folder called Structured Allocations as Data Actions. To summarize, legacy allocations are currently only available to view and execute. Existing legacy allocations have been automatically migrated to data actions, and new allocations can be created in the data action designer. It's easy to find this folder and system. For this, we've opened up our folder structure here, and then we've navigated to the public directory, which we'll do right now. So public directory, and then we'll look for the structured allocation folder. And this will be the folder where your structured allocations will be migrated as part of this enhancement, and you'll see them converted now into data actions.
We have a new enterprise planning related enhancement in the data export API, specifically in the data subscriptions endpoint. We have added a new option for Delta export. So previously with Delta export, if there was a change in a record, in any of the measures in a record, you would see the entire new record value exported. So if the previous value in a measure, say cost, was 100 and it changed to 250, what you would see in the Delta export would be 250. We now have an option called Fact Data Differences, and that allows you to see not the entire new value, but rather the change in the value. And so if you use this option, you would see 150. You would see a delta value of 150 going from 100 to 250. We have a new enterprise planning feature covering currency rates. Specifically, we have added 3 new data sources available for importing currency rate data from. This would be SAP HANA, this would be S4 HANA, and OData. There are no user experience changes in this feature, so there's no new dialogues, nothing new that you're going to see in the UX. The only thing you will have is when you are selecting a data source for a currency conversion, you will have these three extra sources available to you.
Historically, a data action could be created and executed by a planning user. However, we have steps in the multi-actions related to data imports, predictive, and API calls that may be beneficial to the BI user. The role menu has been enhanced to allow BI users to create, maintain, and delete multi-actions. The BI admin role will automatically be enhanced with these authorizations, whereas custom roles will not be changed. With this enhancement, BI users can create and update multi-actions with non-planning related steps. Planning steps for existing multi-actions will not be maintainable with a BI license. BI users with proper role authorization, you'll be able to trigger multi-actions that do not contain planning steps. We have also renamed the menu trigger to the term starter in the story menu. Let's take a look. So we've opened up a story with a BI user license that has the ability to maintain multi-actions. So here you can see we've executed a multi-action with planning steps, and we're getting a warning that we're not going to be able to execute this multi-action. So we're going to go take a look at the multi-action just to show the planning step. Here you can see that the planning step is not edible as a BI user, but if you wanted to, you could enhance the multi-action as well by adding non-planning related steps. In this case, I'm going to create a new multi-action just to show the steps that are available. So here you can see the predictive step, the data import step, and the API step. So these could be added to an existing multi-actions, or you can create your own multi-actions as well based on these steps. And these steps will be executable by a BI user with proper authorizations. Now we're going to take a look at the menu item for starter. So this was previously named, in this case, a multi-action. Trigger has now been renamed to multi-action starter. So for a planning user, you'd also see the data action starter, planning sequence starter, as well as a data import starter. With these enhancements, we're empowering the BI user to create and maintain multi-actions to better manage their models and processes.
This quarter, we've introduced some improvements to our plan audit table or data change table, specifically around the ability to purge records. So up until this point, you've only been able to purge records based on a pre-configured or selectable time range. But now you have a lot more flexibility in terms of what records are deleted. So you can delete records by any dimension in the model except for the measure, and any additional combination of audit time, audit user, or the specific audit action. Right? So all of those are available. If you have pre-filtered the data change table and you click the delete button, then the filter parameters that you've already defined will automatically inherit to the deletion. Of course, you can override those before you actually purge the records. So let's jump over and see this in action. So I'm in my data change table, and if I click the sort of the delete icon now in the toolbar, you'll see that it automatically inherits time as an option, but that I can now select any other dimension in the model except for the measure. I can remove the time if I want to, but I can add one of the other dimensions if I want to. So I can customize the time range, add any other dimension. But also, if I happen to pre-filter the data change table, let's say based on currency, and then I click the delete, you'll see that it automatically inherits the booked currency GBP that I've already filtered as the option that it assumes I want to purge. Right? And again, if I were to extend that and then add, say, my Best Bikes entity, I went ahead and clicked that delete. Again, it will inherit those two filters into the delete. And then I could add others if I want to. So I'll just go ahead and click the delete and you'll see that the records that I have filtered will be removed. So we're excited this quarter to introduce our data file upload. So if you'll recall, last year we introduced a custom widget that we released on GitHub that was meant to enable a story designer to put a widget on the canvas that would allow users to upload from a CSV or Excel file. But our intent was always to support this capability natively in SAP Analytics Cloud. And so with this quarterly release, that's what we've done. Now, how that's going to work is we're going to introduce a new area in the data management section of the modeler for upload jobs. And in that area, an administrator can create a wrangling job using a template file that will represent the structure of the file they expect the end users to upload. So they can create as many of these upload jobs as they want. They can go through the wrangling process by uploading the template. And then what happens is the story designer has a new starter trigger. We're renaming what was formerly planning triggers to starter. And there'll be a new data upload starter that the story designer can put on the canvas. When they do that, they'll point to one of those upload jobs that was created by the plan administrator or in the modeler. And they can obviously set some settings related to what version and whether the user can be prompted and change that, and whether there's a automatic publish operation. And then of course, when in view mode, when the user clicks that button, they'll be prompted to select a file on their local machine for upload. And it will assume that template structure on the upload file, and it will import the data into either a public edit version or an explicit private version. And there'll be a publish operation if you're in a public version. It will leave the data unpublished. Of course, you can set that on the upload trigger if you want to auto-publish, but the user can alternatively publish the data themselves. And in this way, it will go through other validation checks. So let's jump over and see this in action. So I'm in my story. I already have it configured with a starter, but if I was going to utilize one of the upload jobs, I could navigate to the starter and select the upload starter, and it would deploy a trigger on the canvas. And if we sort of look at this upload quantities trigger already, you'll see that it points to a given model, an upload job within that model, again, managed in the data management. I can control whether it uses the planning area, whether it's going to publish or leave the data unpublished if it's a public version, which target version I want to upload to, and whether I'm going to allow that to be overridden and controlled by the user. Now in my example, you'll see that I have a file on the right. That's the source file that I'm going to upload. It's a snapshot of what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and select the file that I want to upload. I'll specify the sheet, and the first row does have sort of header columns, so the first row is not meant to be imported. You'll see that I get a pop-up indicating that the job is uploading. And what will happen is it will give me an update on how many records have loaded and how many have rejected. So in my case, I have one row rejected out of 9. I have the ability to download that row, that rejected record set if I want, and there'll be an indicator as to why the record was rejected. Alternatively, of course, if I was happy with this data, I could go ahead and publish the data as is. If we were to just navigate over to the model, just to look at how this upload template job looks, the process, if I navigate over to my data management, you'll see I have this new section, upload jobs. In my case, this user upload quantity, which is the job that I referenced in the starter a minute ago. And we'll just open the template. I'm going to sort of accelerate the video here just to show what it looks like. Again, it goes through sort of a standard data wrangling where I get the prepared data, sort of the map to facts, and then any review. So this is the end user upload process as part of our Q3 release.
As part of the administrative page, we already provided the capability to specify how we would like to send out notifications to the user, such as by email or in-app notifications. We can make these assignments to all roles participating in calendar-related activities. With this enhancement, we can specify a time to send a single email that consolidates these notifications to make it easier for the planner to manage their calendar activities via email. Note, Email reminders or updates from bulk editing are excluded from these updates. Now let's take a look in the system. Here we've created some simple tasks, tasks A, B, and C, which we've assigned to myself as the user here. So we would normally receive 3 different notifications via email, which we'll see in the configuration to this user. So now what we're going to do is we're going to, in this case, start all of these activities at, in this case, 11 a.m. And then we're going to, through the administrator's configuration, we're going to configure it to send out a bulk email at 11:30. So we'll take a look at the configuration and its execution. We've created 3 independent tasks, which all have been assigned to myself, that are executing at 11 a.m. So that's when they're going to become active. So if we want to look at the configuration here, we can go to the Administrative tab in our menu and then select the notifications. And here we can see that we have selected the option to send out email notifications, and we've selected a time period. So it's going to be sent out at 11:30 a.m. my time, and we can see that it's been translated to a universal time as well. So as part of the configuration, and this is something we've offered previously, as a type of user, you can indicate how you'd like to send out the email or how to send out the notifications, and that can be email or via the in-app notification. So when we send out the single notification via email, it'll consolidate these tasks into one email, which we see here for our tasks A, B, and C. So instead of receiving multiple emails with these tasks, they can all be consolidated into one place, making them easier to manage as an end user.
So with this release, we're taking our first step into native support for unit conversion capabilities. And these will function very similar to how currency conversion works. So the first thing to note is that we're introducing a new standard unit conversion table. That's a non-editable table within the conversions tab of the modeler application. So we've changed it from currency conversions to conversions. As with the currency conversion, we define the units based on the measure dimension. And we can define either fixed unit type for source or target, or we can automatically derive it from dimension properties. When we want to convert from a source measure to a target unit measure, we define a conversion unit measure. Again, similar to currency conversion, and we can define that as either a fixed unit type or derived from the dimension properties. And when we're entering data in the model itself, of course, we can enter data on the base measure, the base unit measure, or on any of the potential conversion measures. Now, something to note is that in this initial release, we will not support unit conversion based on data actions, but that will come shortly. And again, this is standard unit conversions, right? So standard units. This does not support custom unit conversion. That's something we also plan to support in the future. So let's jump over and see this in action. So we'll start in the story, and you'll see that I have 3 measures in my story. This is machine oils in liters, in gallons, and in barrels. Right? Liters is going to be my base measure. If I just enter an amount of machine oil liters that I anticipate or require for production for my bikes, right, I'll get the corresponding conversion measures for gallons and barrels. Right? I can do this for any of my products. And of course, I can enter data on the conversion measure itself. So if I want for the RC002 bike, I need to estimate that one in barrels. I can calculate the corresponding expected use in liters. If we jump over to our model, you'll see that we have a new tab in the modeler application called conversions. We've changed that from currency conversions, and we've introduced this standard unit conversion table. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a non-editable table, but it allows the triangulation of any unit to any other standard unit. If we look at the model itself, I have a measure here, MO, machine oil in liters. I define that as a unit type. It's fixed, and the unit type in this case is liters, or L. But of course, if I wanted to, I could have sourced that from a dimension if I had it as an attribute in a dimension. If I look at my calculations, I now have conversion measures, In my conversion measures, I have two conversion measures related to the units. The first is the machine oil in gallons, which again is fixed gallons. And I also have a machine oil in barrels, which also is of fixed type, and it's of unit type barrel, right? So it uses that unit conversion table to do the triangulation between the base measure and the target unit measures. So this is the support for standard unit conversions with our Q3 2024 QRC release. So with this release, we're introducing enhanced flexibility in terms of styling and theming the value driver tree, and specifically doing that via CSS. So we've introduced a whole bunch of other styling options that you can configure, things like color of the lines, the background color, the color of the text, and color of the header. These are all available. So this allows you to sort of create a unified theme across the entire story, inclusive of the VDT. So let's jump over and see this in action. So I'm in my story, and I've got a global class defined, SAP XPA. If I navigate over to my story cascading style sheets, and I choose my value driver tree, you'll see in the comments examples that I have significantly more flexibility in terms of the styling. So let's go ahead and make some changes. I'm first going to take off this text that I've commented out here to change the background for the VDT node to light blue. So if we flip over now, we'll see, of course, that our VDT nodes now do reflect the light blue update. I'll change this first to black. I'm going to change the theme here. And then I'll go ahead and paste in some other changes to sort of solidify the theming that I want to use. So I've got white text and I've got an orange title. And so when I navigate over to the VDT now, you'll see that it updates according to the changes that I've included in the CSS. So this is the enhancement for value driver trees and cascading style sheets with our Q3 release.
Support of add-ons filter with unbooked mode. Add-on filters covering more than one dimension are not considered as expected when dimensions are set to unbooked mode. In general, more unbooked data sets are shown than expected in the table. Add-on filter doesn't often lead to the desired result due to technical limitations of the add-on filter implementation. Checking the new option named Add Additional Filters to suppress unused unbooked members adds more filters under the hood, which compensate for these limitations. Let's have a look at a concrete example. When using the Show Unbooked option for the dimension of the block structure, version, and time here, the system will return a Cartesian superset of tuples. When checking the new option, Add Additional Filters to suppress unused unbooked members, the unwanted combinations are suppressed. For example, here is a complex filter composed of a block structure based on version and time. The Show Unbooked mode is activated for version and time in the table widget. The block 1 is composed of version actual time 2019, and the block 2 is composed of version forecast time 2020. When the new option is unchecked, the system is returning the following tuple combinations: actual 2019, actual 2020, forecast 2019, forecast 2020. But when the new option is checked, the new option being located here, add additional filters to suppress unused unbooked members, the system returns this time the following tuple combinations: actual 2019, forecast 2020, which is what was expected.
I'm Jeanne Bigonnet, Product Manager with SAP Analytics Cloud. I will introduce you the latest feature for the Microsoft Office integration part for the add-in Excel. We have introduced a new capability in the member selector to select the members of the dimension, and this is the capability to select member using a range operator. So using the between operator, then you can define for which range of members you want to retrieve in your reporting. Please note that this feature will be only available on the flat list mode and not in your hierarchical view of the dimension. Next, we introduced the capability to define a specific formatting based on threshold definition. So the idea was to really get the similar look and feel as what you know in the story, in the web. So with that, you can define a specific threshold and apply it with your reporting in your workbooks. Really important feature that we introduce is the capability to store the workbooks directly in SAP Analytics Cloud. So similarly from what you know from the stories, you can now directly save your workbook on the repository file of SAP Analytics Cloud. And of course, you will retrieve all the capabilities from the file repo in terms of storage and also organizations of the file. Lastly, we introduce a new live source, SAP HANA Cloud. And with this new live source, we open again a new capability to connect to new data source with Excel on top of SAP Analytics Cloud. That's all for the Excel part. Thanks.
Hello. With this video, I would like to introduce you to our new SAP Analytics Cloud add-in for Microsoft PowerPoint, which is going to be delivered for the first time this quarter. With this new add-in for PowerPoint, you will be able to connect from your PowerPoint presentation to an SAC tenant and then navigate through the stories, your stories in SAC, through the pages in a story, and then to select whatever widget or chart you would like to insert in your presentation. Once inserted in the slides, the widgets will become an image, a PowerPoint image, but it will be an image that you will be able to refresh on demand in order to have at any time when you need the latest data visible in your presentation. So let's have a look at the demo right now. In this presentation, I have inserted some SAC widgets containing data for the Best Run Bikes company to present the quarterly highlights of this company to my top management. So for instance here you can see that I have already built last quarter some slides for the products, KPIs with 2 widgets, another one for the sales. You can see I can insert some bar charts, numeric points, tree maps, and so on. So these slides are already there, and today my manager has asked me to insert a new slide with the travel data of the company. So the slide is empty currently, and I will go and connect to my SAC tenant using the new SAP Analytics Cloud add-in for PowerPoint. So in the menu here you can see this new item. I'm already connected to my tenant. And you can see in the add-in pane that you can see all the stories from your recent stack stories or from your favorite stack stories in SAC. So today I'm going to use this story containing all the KPIs of Best Run Bikes company, and as you can see here I can see in each of the pages all the widgets available for me to be inserted in the slide. Some of them are gray because their format is not yet supported by our add-in, namely geomaps and tables are not yet available to be supported in this first version of the add-in. But I will be able to select other widgets today. So for instance, in the travel page, I will use the year-to-date travel expenses numeric point. Here it will be loaded in the pane, so I can see the look of the widget and the data inside, and I will use the Add Widget button to insert it in my slide. So here I can move it, I can expand it, resize the widget as an image. And to do another widget, I will use this time expenses per department. This time I'm not going to use directly this chart in the slide, I'm going to edit it. This will open a pop-up where I will be able to interact with the widget in a bigger space and really get the level of data I want to use in my presentation. Because here I will be able to do some, for instance, some drill down on the department. I will be able to filter on a value if I really want to focus on certain values, etc. And I have here all the menu that allows me to see all the interactive actions I can do on my widget. So today I will remove this drill I have done and go back to the original state, and I will, for instance, ask for a rank on the department. Let's see, for the top 5 departments regarding expenses. So now I am glad with the data I have here, so I will click OK. And now the chart will be reflected with those transformations into the pane. And I'm able to add this level of data context in my slide with the top 5 department with most travel expenses in the company. So now I can of course use all the features of PowerPoint, such as inserting text or comments before sending this presentation to a colleague for a review. But now, because I have inserted here the data from last quarter in my presentation, what I need to do is to refresh the data in order to get the latest data for the presentation tomorrow to my management. So I just need to click on the refresh data here, and I will be able to decide which widgets I want to refresh within my presentation. As you can see here, the add-in has retrieved all the widgets present in my presentation. I can decide to select them all and to refresh them, or just to select the ones I want to refresh. Today I will just select refresh one of them. So you can see that the selected widget is refreshed. Only the data, the new data, is displayed now in the presentation. And you can see here, now that the refresh has been processed, that you have the latest date when the widget has been refreshed. You should see here in a few seconds that it's just now, the data has been just now refreshed. So with that, you can see that it's very easy to build only once a presentation with all the data you need, all the widgets you need the first time, and then reuse the same presentation every month, every quarter, every week if you need, and just click on refresh in order to get the latest data without having to rebuild every time your presentation by doing a copy-paste, for instance, from your SAC stories to your PowerPoint. So thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed this demo. Bye.
As part of Q3 2024 cycle, we have released a number of features for optimized view and design mode aimed at bridging the gap between classic and optimized stack. In optimized view mode, we now support export to Google Slides, application of scaled measures across pages, export section report printing. In optimized design mode, we now support blended visualization based on live BW data model, story calculations with ID and description, smart grouping, and time series forecasting. We will be looking at demo for few of these. Now let's move into the demos. To start with, we will look into the blended charts for live BW based data model. The live BW based data model in SAC stories, now we can do blending. It includes creation of new blended charts and conversion of existing blended charts from the classic experience to the optimized experience. We have also improved the design time experience to guide story designers on better understanding for the blending. Limitations is that as of now we do not support linking on time dimension based. So let's start with the blending support for live BW based data models in optimized view mode, so optimized design mode. So to start with blending, let me add a linked model here. So I have already established a link between my sales model and the daily sales estimate, which is based on sales organization. So once my linking is done, I will have to add a link model to my view. So this provides a completely guided experience. So here I have a linked model and it says that at least one measure or dimension from the linked model has to be used in the visualization. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a measure from my linked model into the view. And this way I can bring a blending of the data model based on live BW, blending of models based on live BW connection. The one thing to note here is the blending can be done or the model linking can be done based on non-time dimensions only at the moment. Now let's look into the second demo, that is the demo for story calculation. The feedback that we have received from customers is reusing of calculations has been a challenge. Therefore, we have introduced a new description field while defining calculation. This description can be reused across multiple calculation. The description can contain special characters like square brackets, angular brackets, period symbol. The description is available for calculated accounts, measures, cross calculation, calculation input controls, and calculated dimensions. The calculated measure description can include values from the calculation input controls. The description changes dynamically based on the selection of the calculation input control. We also have an option to display the ID and description of these calculated dimension or accounts or measures. And it is similar to how you display the ID or description of a measure. Now let's look at a demo for this. Now let's take a look at the calculation ID and description, which we have enabled as part of the optimized view mode. So here I have created a calculation. So let me show you how the calculation is done. It has been created. So this is the net revenue calculation, and the description has been set accordingly. Now, whenever a calculation is created, by default the description is empty. So the users can choose to have the same description. They can choose to continue with the same description, but the ID will always be different. So in this way, users are allowed to create multiple calculations with the same name. So let's take a look at that. So here I am duplicating my calculation. And I also have an option to display this as ID or description. So when I choose ID, it will always so whenever I choose as ID, it will always give me the ID of the calculation. Now this particular option of description is also enabled for calculated dimensions. The next feature that we have introduced is exporting to Google Slides. Once you have connected your Google account, now we allow you to export stories to Google Slides. It can include appendix and it can be performed as a background export. Now let's look at some of the features that we have delivered as part of the optimized view mode. So as part of optimized view mode, what we have delivered is exporting to Google Slides. So here I have an option to export to Google Slide. Click on accept and continue. I have my account already enabled here. You will have to sign into your respective Google account. You have an option to export it as a new presentation or a existing presentation. You can give a name for the export. Users have an option to include specific pages or all the pages. They can include appendix and export it as part of the foreground or background process. The second feature which I want to demo is smart grouping. This is again a gap that we have covered with the optimized mode. Now this is a design time and view time configuration, and this is available for scatter plot and the bubble chart. To enable smart grouping, the user has to go into the context menu of the chart, more options, and add smart grouping. Here users can select the number of clusters they want within a chart. They can also select the custom group name for the chart. Here I have enabled it the clusters to be 4, and I can choose a group name as well. Once I click on apply, the group will be applied to the scatterplot chart. Thank you. The other feature that I want to show you or I want to give you a demo on is the forecasting capability within the time series chart. To enable forecasting, go to context menu of a time series chart, click on more options, select add forecast, and you can choose the type of forecast, whether you want it to be automatic, exponential smoothing, linear regression, or advanced. In advanced, you have an additional option to choose the forecast period and any value which you want to consider as an influencer for the forecast input. With optimized mode, now we support geomaps with bubble layer to color by dimension in lightweight viewer. Users will be able to see the performance enhancements while loading a geomap. There is no demo for this. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Jieden. I am Product Manager for SAP Analytics Cloud. Here I would like to introduce the new features that we are delivering with the QRC3 release in the category of story extensibility. The first feature is the composite property sheet support. We already delivered the composite features in the past releases. Composite is a reusable widget that you create once and then can reuse in multiple stories. Like a story header could be a composite, like a central commenting dialog could be a composite, like a central and a card widget could be a composite. So with the QRC3 releases, we are further enhance the composite capability, and this time we deliver the composite interface property sheet support. Means for a composite developer, in composite design time, he is able to define the interface properties like the header description, like a header title, and like the logo in the header for the visibility. And then in the story design time, a story designer is very easy to leverage this composite through this property sheet support. For example, he can open the composite in the design time, right mouse click, manage property, and then go to the property sheet and to maintain this property. So here is we're talking about configuration, and without writing any codes, story designer can already leverage the composite to use the composite in the story. So that will extremely make the life of the story designer easier to consume the composite, to leverage the composites for building the story. The second feature is the cross-page pop-up widget. In the past, a pop-up is always connected to one page. So for example, if you want to have a central commenting pop-up, and in the past releases, you need to create for different pages. And with that, you duplicate your widgets in your stories. And therefore, we introduce a new type of pop-up that can be accessed across multiple story pages. We call that cross-page pop-up. And that can exactly cover the scenario like central and commenting dialog, central bookmark dialog, and so on. And all the data exchange between pop-up and the different pages are covered via global script variables and script objects. Because within a story, global script variables and objects are shared through different pages, and different pages can all trigger this story central pop-up. And with that approach, we can significantly reduce the widget duplication. And also because a central pop-up, I only trigger it when I open it. So we can improve the initial loading performance by only creating widget instances within the story pop-up when it's activated, and not already during the initial page loading. And the next is that we are here strengthening the collaboration between the story designer and the story developer. And here we are introducing an option in the stories. This is script-related settings. And if the story developer had to turn on that setting, means the story designer can, based on that story, and modify the story, and even if the story contains the scripting capability. And with that, we are unblock the scenarios like leverage the story template that contains the scripting for story designer. Means as of the Q3 QRC release, and story developers and so on can already creating the story composite contains the scripting, and then story designer who do not have the scripting capabilities and also knowledge and authorization, they can still leverage this story template and to create their own stories. And the next is that we are able now to retrieve the variables that are not input ready as dynamic text or through script API. In backend BW, we have the non-input ready variables like the authorization variables, and these variables are not relevant for the user interaction because the user cannot input anything. But still, we want to display the variable values also on the dashboard for the data transparency for the viewer, or we want to reuse these variable values for the further interactions. So therefore, there is a need to get the value as basically as a dynamic text or through the script API. So with Q3 QRC releases, it's possible that you can retrieve these non-input ready variables from SAP BW as either as a dynamic text, and like here, or using the script API, get variable values and also that's get variables. Now I would like to show you the live demo of these different features. So let's first start with the interface composite property sheet. So let's have a look into how we can now define a composite. Like my explanation before, a typical composite is a story header I can define as a composite and saved in the file repository and then reused in multiple stories. And now with this story header as a composite, I have the option to define interface properties. So here I define the description title, all these 5 interface properties. These 5 interface properties later on the story designer can leverage in story design time and to configure the composite. So what we are doing is that you can, for example, define description as an interface property. And this interface are connected to a certain widget within your composite. Like here, that's a description. I can select the linked elements. You can open this dialog to select linked elements. So here we have already selected, and the description are linked with the text widget description here. And if we go to the description, title is the same. And we can also define the properties with the type of Boolean, means true or false. For example, the visibility. All the visibility of this logo and the text, I can define as a property called visibility property, and with a type of Boolean. For example, this visibility description and the title. So that is how you are going to define the interface property. And later on in the stories, you basically go to your composite, right mouse click to start the linked property sheet. And here, for example, with the descriptions, you are able to just give some text as a description here, and for the description title is the same. And build innovations, you can see with SAC Unified Story. So once I update it, click and done, it will, you see this update is directly already in the design time. You see basically how you can configure this composite in the design time. And we can also go to some visibilities. Currently, the logo means actually SAP logo is turned on to true. I can say in the runtime, I want to hide this SAP icon. Click on that. So you can just leverage a composite, configure the composite in the story design time. You don't need to write any codes. You can configure your composite. Click on the save. And then now we can just go to the view time, and you will be able to see and what you configured reflected to the view time. You see, you configured actually this logo as a false, and that means the visibility is false, and then in the runtime we don't see this SAP logo. Okay, so that's very convenient now for the story designer that leverages a property sheet to configure the composite and without needs to write any code. That's the first feature. The second feature, I would like to show you the story central pop-up on this capability. So if we look at this view time, so I have multiple pages in my story. Over the story, I can trigger a comment dialog as a pop-up. Okay, I can write it, and for example, in the second page, and if I navigate to the second page, I can basically add the comment again, and to trigger this comment pop-up. Let me reload the story, and then we can, and to see this, yeah, I can navigate it to the next story, like here, and also basically add a comment here. That means in the runtime, all the pages, 4 pages, are shared the same pop-up, actually this comment pop-up. So how can I do it? And in the design time, you just go to the outline, and there is a category, okay, called story pop-up. And the story centric pop-up, you need to define actually in the category story pop-up here. So we can see here exactly our example, and that's a commenting pop-up. So if you define your pop-up here, that means is shared across different story pages, and you can trigger this pop-up through actually different pages, like here. And with that, we can see before you need to go to each page, add the pop-up here, and then you duplicate basically the entire widgets. And then now for this shared pop-up, you can actually go to use a story pop-up to create once and shared and through different multiple pages. And with that, and you can reduce this the widget amount in the story. And in addition, also as already mentioned, if you are basically the refresh your story, and the pop-up will not be touched at the beginning, and only if you click on the pop-up, then it will be rendered. That also helps you to improve your initial startup performance of your story. Okay, then the next I'd like to mention that we also have a capability that we can to enable the story designer to modify the stories, even the story containing scripting. Okay, so we can cover the scenario like here, and I can save this template with the scripting, and the story designer can leverage the template. So for that, we need to have a check for this story. First, go to the story details, and I need to turn on that and scripting related settings. Story developer need to turn on that toggle, and when this toggle is on, means the story designer can modify the story, even the story contains the scripting. So I turn on that, it's already turned on, and I can now save story, for example, as a template. And just basically give a particular name to say my template, and click on the save. Now I will log into actually SAC as another user, okay, and without the scripting privilege. So I just go to my stories again, and to see the templates what I just created before. And that's a template I created before. So I click on that, and you see this template contains the scripting, right? Now I, as a story designer, and without the scripting and privilege, you will be able to see in the outline the FX is grayed out for me because I am the story designer. I don't have the privilege of the scripting part. But I can still leverage this template that contains the scripting. Basically, this add comment is triggered by scripting. So I can here and basically to leverage this template and to add the charts what I need and to create my story. So you just choose a particular and choose a data model, and within the data model and select the key figures like I can do here, and select the times, the date, and then we already add a chart in the story template, and I can now save. As my test story, click on that. Then you, as a story designer, without any scripting knowledge, you will be able to leverage and modify the stories that contain the scripting, and to save it. And then we will be able to also run this story in the runtime. Okay, so that is the feature for the story designer and the developer and collaboration. And now I would like to also demonstrate the last features that read the non-input ready variables as a dynamic text. So we have actually here a BW table based on the BW live model. And now if you actually add the dynamic text, and if you go to the model variables, now you're also able to see the non-input ready variables. That is not possible before. Before it's only input ready variables. As of QRC3 here, you can also find the non-input ready variable. So for example, my customer is a non-input ready variable, then we're able to see the values. And also, and I can get non-input ready variables values, and through the script API, I just show you how to code it, and you just using the get variable values and then specify your variable name, and then you will be able to get the non-ready input, input ready variable. And also the other script API is to get all the variables from your data source, and which now can also include the non-input ready variables. So if we go to the view time and to see the functions, we will be able to see that the non-input ready variable displayed as dynamic text, And if I use a script API, I can also exactly retrieve the variable values for customer. And with this on the script API, I can retrieve all of the variables in my data model, and that also including non-input ready variable. Like here, this variable is non-input ready variable. With that, you can have more transparency for your dashboard and for your story viewer, and to see the value of a non-input ready variable from BW. Okay, that's it from my side. Thanks for the listening.
Hi, this feature is a custom widget enhancement, incorporation of unbooked data. So currently, the query without term for the custom widget doesn't include unbooked data. However, display unbooked value is crucial. So this enhancement will allow customers to effectively use unbooked data in their custom widgets. Now let's take a look at the demo. Hi, I would like to demo how to support unbooked data in custom widgets. Currently, the query without term for the custom widget doesn't include unbooked data. However, display unbooked value is important. Hence, we are introducing this feature. So this option already available on the built-in chart and table. So I check the unbooked data. We're going to show some unbooked data on the chart table. So now we are doing the similar things on the custom widgets. Provide a UI to check the unbooked data. Then I save it and view it in the runtime. So we can also use a SDK debugger, a tool that we provided for the developer to check the data returned. So now this for the unbooked data, we're going to return the null value. So the custom widget developer can use the data to render their widgets. So we not only support on the acquired data, but also support the live data. So for this chart, we check the unbooked. We're going to show the unbooked data. Yeah, for this data, only the year 2004 has the book data. Others are unbooked data. Thank you. This is the end of my demo. Hi, I would like to demonstrate a new feature of supporting calculated dimension custom widgets. At present, it's impossible to create or use calculated dimensions in custom widgets. However, this feature is important for customers wanting to combine dimensions, group them, or create account-based ones. That's why we have developed this feature. So this is a custom widget. It's the zoomable chart. On the feature panel, I can create new account dimensions, new different functions. So here I use uppercases to change the sales manager's name. Now you can see that the calculate dimension is used in this custom widget. It is a zoomable chart. You can use the mouse to click on the data point to zoom in and zoom out the chart. So this is another custom widget, the sample chart. Now it shows the location. Then I would like to show it as a store. But you can see that the locked data points is hard to visualize it. So here I would like to create a new category dimension. It is account-based. I can group the stores based on the gross margin value. So I would like to create a group ABCD from different gross margin value. I can also create a new others group for all the other stores. So you can see they have a simplified store and different groups for the stores. Now let's look at the API because it's important for the custom widget developer to use the API. So in the API, you call the data source get dimensions. So let's save it and run it. You open the console log to check the result. Now, from the API returned, you can see that it also returned including the two category dimensions. So the customer developer can use these results. So this is the end of my demo. Thank you for watching.
Hello, my name is Pranav and I'm a product manager in SAP Analytics Cloud. I'm going to give you a feature which we have delivered recently as part of a user collaboration. This is about a configuration within a commenting widget to show only last comment. A comment widget can consist of n number of comment, but at times top management are interested only into viewing a last comment because it has the latest and the greatest information. So in order to ensure they don't get confused with the all comment that is available, we came up with this configuration where you can save a comment widget within a story to display only last comment. However, during view time, if they wish to view all the comment, then they can still go ahead and enable that. So let me give you a demo of this feature. This is the story that I have it, and here I have a comment widget. In this comment widget, I can see there are a lot of comment that is added, but I don't want to confuse end user with all the comment, but would be interested in showing only a last comment. So I have a configuration where it says only last added comment. The moment I select this, it will show only last comment. I can go ahead and save this story. And now whenever a user open the story, they will be viewing only last comment within this comment widget. But during view time, I can still go ahead and see all the comments. So I can go ahead and still go and see all the comment within commenting widget. This setting would be retained since I have saved this. So whenever user open next time, they will see the saved state of it. The saved state is so only last comment. Thank you for watching. Hello. Hi everyone. My name is Pranav and I am a product manager in SAP Analytics Cloud. I'll be demoing a feature which is as part of a user collaboration within SAP Analytics Cloud. This is about a feature where user get an option to disable story comment within a story. Like we have heard from a lot of customer who want to make use of a data point comment which is contextual in nature, but they want to disable story comment for various reasons. So we have come up with a configuration where you can disable the story comment within the story, and then the story comment will not be available, but you can still continue to work with the data point comment. Let me take you through the demo. This is the story that I have it. And if I go to the edit mode, if I go to the story details section, you can see we have a configuration allow story comment. So by default, this is enabled, but in case if I don't want to use story comment, I can disable it and save it. The moment I disable this and the story is saved, I will not get an option to add a story comment, which is nothing comment on any of the widgets or any other pages. So if I now try to click this widget and try to add comment, you can see I will not have that add comment option available. Or even if I had this add comment over here, you can see I don't get an add comment over here, or this is something disabled. The story comment are disabled over here. In case if I want to enable it back, I have to go to this story detail and enable this back. So now that story comment is enabled, you will be able to add a story comment, and if there's any story comment which is already added, you will be able to see that as well. Okay, so now if I go to any of the widgets, you can go ahead and see you have more option. You have add and add comment. It is enabled. So this is like, so with this feature, you have an option to enable or disable story comment. Similarly, for a table, we already have an option to enable or disable comment within a table. So now with this, you get more flexibility to control what kind of comment that you want to use as part of your story. Thank you for watching. Hi everyone, my name is Pranav and I'm a product manager in SAP Analytics Cloud. I'm going to demo a feature within user collaboration, and this feature is part of a scheduling publication. I'll be talking about two features. The first one is scheduling in PowerPoint format. So we were already supporting PDF and CSV in Optimized Design Experience Story, and now we will also support PowerPoint format. As you know, the PowerPoint format was already supported in Classic Story, but in the Optimized Design Experience, it was not supported. Going forward, this PowerPoint format would also be supported in the Optimized Story. The second feature, what I'll talk about within scheduling publication, is delivering a story content as part of an email body. So we know, like as part of a scheduling, you can deliver a story with as an attachment over an email. Now, we have also heard from a lot of corporates or a lot of customer, they don't want to have corporate email as part of attachment, but they want to have this as part of an email. So we started supporting to deliver the story content as part of an email body. So the attachment will continue to be there. Plus you can deliver also as part of an email body. And in case if you want to deliver both as an attachment and email body, you can still achieve this. Let's go through a demo of both the feature together. This is the story that I have it, and create a schedule on top of it. I'll go to the story schedule publication. I'll create a schedule of type broadcast. I will have it defined right now. And then as part of format, if you'll see, we get this PowerPoint format. So PDF and CSV was already supported. Now you will also get to deliver as part of a PowerPoint format. So for this demo, let it be as a PDF. Now email subject, I'm not going to change, and as part of email body, I can add my content. And then email delivery option, we will have these two options. I can deliver is as an attachment, which is a default option, and it was already supported. Plus, apart from that, I will also have an option to deliver as part of an email body. So if I select this, it will deliver only in the email body. If I select this, it will be delivered as part of an email body and as part of attachment. So let me select this for this demo, and I'll remove this include story link. I will deliver the story to myself, and I will also select by default to keep it simple, I'll deliver its page 1 and disable this appendix. Now I have created the schedule. So what basically we have seen right now, you can deliver into PowerPoint format, and also while delivering over email, apart from attachment, you can also deliver as part of an email body. So this schedule is created. When it will run, it will deliver over email as part of attachment and within the email body. So let's go through that my email, which is already delivered, and we can see it is part of an email body. Okay, you can see I have got this email delivered. If I go down, you can see this is delivered as part of an attachment. So I have a PDF version which is within the attachment. And if I scroll down the email, you can see the first page of that story is also delivered as part of an email body. So now I can see this is delivered as part of an email body. So in case if you have multiple pages, those multiple pages would be delivered with the limitation of it should not extend beyond 20 pages when you are delivering as part of an email body. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching. Hopefully our demos have helped you leverage the latest features in SAP Analytics Cloud in your organization. Remember to leave a like on this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with everything Analytics Cloud. We are excited to see what's to come in 2024, so stay tuned and we'll see you next time.